Dear colleagues, we go on with the work of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, and today we are hosting a second briefing on finance. We'll talk about risks that a budget resolution entails, or whether this is a step to sustainable future. So Pavlo Kukhta and Pavlo Jaworskyi, experts of the Reanimation package of reforms, will speak. Good afternoon, Pavlo Jaworskyi, RPR in the Kiev School of Economics. So the general outline of the budget resolution, which is officially called the resolution on the main directions of budget policy for next year. And it is a formality on a certain level. It almost does not perform any functions that usually are associated with a document of this type. This resolution, the budget or pre-budget statement, is a framework document that outlines opportunities and abilities of the state in general and establishes priorities of the budget policy. And the Ukrainian budget resolution does not perform almost any of these functions. Formally, it does correspond to the budget code, but in reality, no. If we try to enumerate the problems, this is a flawed economic review. If you look at the document, you'll see that the economic part is composed of one paragraph with 6 numbers, no analysis how they are linked between each other. And this is just a bare statement. The priorities of budgetary policy are too vague. Yes, there are 10 pages of small print of priorities, and this means you have no priorities at all. And 2 last points that are missing from our resolution is the analysis of the income of the state budget. And it is very good to know what is our projected nominal and real GDP. But this would be, we should know more. And what we recommend, there's a lot of amendments that you may introduce, but if they are made in a pinpointed way, they won't be efficient. You should redo this document altogether. The economic review should be broadened and expanded. It should explain the interaction between the groups of indicators, how unemployment is linked to real GDP. This is important not only for experts, but also for the society. This is not just a document for professionals. It should explain to the society what's the next year's budgetary policy will be. Then it should be structured. The wording there is very, very vague. And as a rule, the international practice uses the approach like there's a problem, there's general description, and then there are ways to solve this problem. And you should also introduce the assessment of revenue for the state budget and maybe revenue that will be raised through specific taxes. The last chapter is the expenditure of the state budget. The principle should be the same, general expenditure and if there is some revenue, then we should say that 7% goes to public health, 7% to defense. These should be specific figures that are bound to change, but not very much. If we do not specify these figures at the first stage, then in December we will have what we usually witness, that the sums are changing categories, and I think that budget resolution should not be adopted, but it will be. And this means that in the autumn we will have what we already had last year, the so-called budget night, when the MPs do not sleep, when they do something, when they post photos in Facebook, what they do, and nothing has changed.
Pavlo Kukhta, RPR. I would like to add to what Pavlo has mentioned, that the problem that we have with this pre-budget statement, the document which will be considered by the committee and tomorrow by the parliament, it illustrates very well the problem with our budget system. When we have a black hole where a lot of money goes in, 1/3 of the GDP, once we are talking about the national and local budgets, and more than half if we are talking about Naftogaz of Ukraine, pension fund and social fund. We do not know why the money is channeled there and whether that's needed. Do we need it? We don't have any substantiation for all these expenditures. Now the document which had to explain that had to clearly state that is just the document which has no explanation, and that is the pre-budget statement. When in winter or in autumn the budget is drafted, the logic of drafting, why there are certain lines in the budget, we will never understand it. The budget will again be non-transparent, and we will not be able to understand whether we need to finance this particular budget sphere or not, whether we need these expenditures or not. Until we clearly understand which part we need, what is efficient, what is not, what should be restructured, we will not be able to address the problem of high budgetary expenditures in Ukraine, which are not efficient. If we look at the international ratings from the point of view of the share of the expenditures in economy, Ukraine gets into top 10. If we look at the efficiency of governance in Ukraine, on corruption, on efficiency of fighting corruption, on quality of governance, according to all international ratings, we are in the bottom. We invest a lot of resources into the system which cannot use these resources efficiently. Until we make this system transparent, we will not be able to address this problem. Without that, we will not be able to resolve our economic problems. Thank you. Any questions? I have a question. Could you please tell, you are saying that the budget resolution is just made for the sake of making a document, but do you believe that taking into account the military situation, the details cannot be shared? Today, Colonel Lysenko was saying about the situation near Mariinka. We do not know how the situation will develop. Maybe the expenditures for war will be much higher. Maybe the government transferring this document to the parliament, maybe the government understands what they are doing. Maybe that's the requirement of the budget code. Maybe taking into account the situation in the country, we need to introduce some changes. No, just the contrary. In the situation when it is difficult to forecast what budget will be, it should say so in the pre-budget statement. The government is lying to the country because they cannot forecast. In a high quality pre-budget statement, it says that we have very big uncertainty as to expenditures because of the war, and scenarios are to be provided, the maximum scenario, the minimum scenario, and then that would have been a high quality pre-budget statement. We now demand more transparency and higher quality document. It's difficult for me to add anything. Everything mentioned is correct. As to this,
About this budget resolution, you're criticizing this pre-budget statement, and if we switch to constructive criticism, do you as an expert group have your own vision? Have you made any calculations, or are you just saying that what they did was wrong and that this should be done? And I have made a general review of the pre-budget statement. I did not go into details. This is not my task to determine the priorities of the state policy. I cannot. I would add that we, as the reanimation package of reforms, have filed our proposals to MPs about, for instance, the introduction of fiscal rights that would limit the level of expenditure of the state, and also some other stuff, but this was rather to quench our consciousness, because this pre-budget statement does not oblige anyone. In autumn or winter, you can write any budget and say that it corresponds to this pre-budget statement. No other questions. Thank you very much. We hope that you'll be here again with the analysis of documents of the budget project.